Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leslie Oliver, and I am the EDI specialist with the Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. Welcome to our next session in the Black History Month speaker series. We're so excited to collaborate with the Faculty of Education to welcome Dr. Campbell back to Western. Before we begin with introductions and the land acknowledgement, I'd like to make you aware of some resources available to the attendees. The closed captions have been enabled, so you can access the captions by hitting the CC button in your control bar, either at the bottom or the top, your Zoom control bar. The chat function has been disabled for this event. If you have a question, please submit it in the Q&A area. Tab in your control options, and we will review them at the end of Dr. Campbell's talk. So we're going to begin with a land acknowledgement offered by Iwi Igobamien. Iwi?
Thank you. We acknowledge that Western University is located on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenape, and Chinabton nations, on lands connected with the London Township and Sombra Treaties of 1796 and the Dish with One Spoon Covenant Wampum. With this, we respect the long-standing relationships that Indigenous nations have to this land, as they are the original caretakers. We acknowledge historical and ongoing injustices that Indigenous peoples, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit endure in Canada, and we accept responsibility as a public institution to contribute toward reviewing and correcting miseducation, as well as renewing respectful relationships with Indigenous communities through our teaching, research, and community service.
Thank you so much for that, Iwi. Now we welcome Dr. Aisha Dakota from the Faculty of Education to introduce our very special guest speaker. Aisha.
Thank you, Leslie. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aisha Dakota. I'm a faculty member in education, cross-appointed to science. My research focuses on STEM education and making it more accessible for students, especially minority girls and Indigenous youth. As well, I focus on supporting women in STEM professions. On behalf of the Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion and the Faculty of Education, I would like to introduce our second speaker as part of the Black History Month speaker series at Western University, Dr. Andrew B. Campbell, or as some might call him, Dr. ABC. I really like that. This is his third presentation to the Western community, and today he will share with us his talk titled Black Excellence 365, Sustaining and Thriving in Academia. Dr. Campbell is a graduate at the University of Toronto with a PhD in Educational Leadership, Policy, and Diversity. He is an Ontario certified teacher and has been an educator for over 25 years in Jamaica, the Bahamas, and Canada. He is presently an academic coordinator and faculty member in the Master of Teaching program at OISE at the University of Toronto and an adjunct assistant professor at Queen's University in Professional Masters of Education. He has authored 2 books, Teachable Moments with Dr. ABC, A Spoonful for the Journey in 2015, and The Invisible Student in the Jamaican Classroom in 2018. He has also a number of publications in journals and book chapters focusing on areas in EDI, 2S LGBTQI+ issues in education, racism and anti-Black racism, and educational leadership. He has presented at numerous conferences and has delivered many presentations as a workshop facilitator, keynote, and motivational speaker. Lastly, Dr. Campbell loves people, food, which I just chatted with him about, fashion, traveling, and bringing community together for a good meal. On behalf of Western University and London community, I welcome you back, Dr. ABC.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thanks for the wonderful welcome. Thanks for having me back again to speak. Thank you for joining. Thank you, community. I really was happy to see that the link the invitation was open to the community. And I think that's many universities and institutions are trying to find better ways to include community in the work there. We are realizing that community needs to be a part and not just outside the walls of these great establishments we call universities. So I want to thank you so much. It's really an honor to be a part of the series. I was here on Monday for the part one, for the first speaker, listening to the historical context. And, you know it's an entire buffet. I want you to know it's an entire buffet. So if you just come in today, I guess you have missed maybe about 3 different servings already, but I'm happy you're here for this serving. So remember, it's an entire buffet. So we want to get into our conversation. And I want to start with in 2020, with all the excitement with racial justice and racial injustice and conversations, I did a keynote with the Ontario School Librarian Associations, school librarians. And I remember in that conversation, for the first time, I was asked a question by one of the librarians. For the first time, I answered with this quote that I've been using for the last maybe 2 years. Black excellence is not new. You just have not featured it. Black excellence is not scarce. You may have not honored it. Black excellence is not reckless. You have not protected it. And Black excellence is not limited. You just have not preserved it. I know when many of us come to you log into an event like this and you want to hear the word Black excellence. I know for many of us, we come to hear a great history lesson on the Black people, what the Black people have done. Black inventors and establishments and leaders of the various movements. But I'm not going to talk about that because it's unfair for me to talk about that without reminding us that great leaders such as Martin Luther King Jr. was listed on the FBI most wanted list. It's not good for us to talk about Black excellence without mentioning and reminding us all that Harriet Tubman was a refugee, hunted by men, wanted dead or alive. The Underground Railroad is not a GO train. Without telling of the many Black people who had to flee the United States in the 60s and the 70s, many of our leaders who wanted to serve and protect through Black excellence, our Black communities had to flee because they were criminalized for their pushback, for their work. Without telling you of the many race massacre we have seen in the USA. One of the biggest one is the Tulsa Massacre of 1921. And this event is considered to be the worst single most massacre in the history of the United States. Listen carefully. The attackers burned and destroyed more than 35 square blocks of neighborhood Black businesses. At that time, one of the wealthiest Black communities in the United States, and was known as Black Wall Street. Black excellence is not new. You have not protected it. Without telling you about Africville in Halifax, that was destroyed by the city of Halifax, one of the few spaces where Black people felt safe. Yes, we know the facts. The reports, we saw the documentaries that they had no service, they had no this, they had no that. Of course, we know why. It was said the city, Africville, began where the city limits ended. Understand that. This space created for Black people, it began where the city limits ended. This kind of thing that we are going through as Black people, oppression, systematic oppression, is not new. The community began where the city limits ended. In an interview on CTV, one of the former residents, Ivan Carvery, expressed, and I quote, he said, the real loss was not the building. The real loss was community. It would be nice if we really continue this conversation. And I shared with you pictures, which I would have loved to do, of Miss South Africa, Zuzubini Tunzi, who won Miss Universe 2019 with her Afro-textured hair, her very low natural hair, and how many Black women and girls were inspired and motivated to see that type of beauty being featured on such a platform. But not mention the trauma and hurt and harm dished out and directed at Black women every day in campuses like ours to show a professional looking hair based on a total colonized standard of beauty. Also not mention the many ways Black women have been harmed on campuses. Also not mention the number of times fashion and beauty brands have been caught in racist acts like Victoria's Secret and their disrespect and dishonor and appropriation of indigenous identity and Asian culture. H&M, Dove, Gucci, Adidas, and the list goes on. Maybe there are others listening who would rather I focus on Black exceptionalism. Dr. Gaby C., let's talk about all the Black people who are doing well. Let's talk about the Black people like yourself who are doing well. And where I would have shared clips and features about the amazing stories of the youngest Black doctor and the youngest Black lawyer, or a Black mom who graduated, top of her class, having 5 children, or an immigrant Black man who came here as a refugee and almost came here with almost nothing, but kind of souped in, saved him, and today he's an influential businessman and leader. All the stories of Black men completing college and universities after leaving prison. I have a funny feeling for the remaining 25 days, there'll be a lot of that. But how do I do that without talking about the present school to prison pipeline issues? Without talking about the many ways Black youth are pushed out of schools, excluded out of universities, the way that the system signals to them, you do not belong here. Without talking about the streaming and the underrepresentation and disproportionate numbers of Black students excluded from certain opportunities and spaces within many of our school boards. We say we're going to be de-streaming in our schools. That's something the Faculty of Education, I'm sure you have been talking about. I have been doing quite a bit of conversation with teachers about de-streaming. We have a problem. We have a problem. The mindset of many of our teachers is rested in deficit. There is a level of refusal to unlearn old, dried up, dead, inappropriate, unnecessary pedagogy happening in our schools. The Faculty of Education, we have work to do. I could continue without talking about the many ways our classrooms lack culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy, or the deficit, as I said before, mindset of many of our educators and our professors as well, who lack the cultural competence in our universities needed to say to our Black students, our Black community, our Black faculty, I see you. ASER 2021 writes about Black exceptionalism, and I quote, "It's the notion that Black people who are educated, smart, articulate, poised, and basically every other positive adjective you can think of are atypical or rarities among the general Black population." So what's wrong with that notion? Well, to begin, educated, smart, articulate, poised, etc. Black people are not rarities and exceptions. I want to repeat that for emphasis. Educated, smart, articulate, poised, etc. Black people are not rarities and exceptions. They may seem to be exceptions based on the biased and unflattering depictions of Black people that run rampant in the mainstream media. This notion of Black exceptionalism also bears the underlying assumptions that there exists a single one-dimensional manifestation of Blackness. A Black person that does not conform to this imposed soul image, false dichotomy, the myth of Black exceptionalism is then denied the individuality and the full spectrum of humanity that is so readily offered to the white population in this country, unquote. At one point, personally for me, at one point in my career, I was having thoughts of needing to be academic Black. What the hell is academic Black? I am amazing. I am qualified and certified. I'm good at what I've done. I am an award-winning teacher. I'm a leader. I'm an activist. I'm compassionate. I am Mother Campbell's son. I am Cassidy, a taximan from Jamaica. Last boy, they call me this wash belly. I am somebody's brother, somebody's son, somebody's nephew, somebody's uncle. I am whole, just as I am. So that 5 seconds thought about trying to be academic Black, that's gone long ago. So we're not going to go there. The notion that we deserve awards because we have demonstrated our resilience is something also we need to really look at in when we talk about Black excellence, because we choose only to look and to depict and to highlight persons who have come up, as we say in the old Black church back home, the rough side of the mountain. You can barely separate religion from Black people. The idea that being Black and exceptional will somehow shield Black people from discrimination and racism is a fallacy. Ask the Black judge who was treated like a criminal. Ask the Black soldier coming back from the war, treated like a criminal by policemen at the gas station. Ask Black professors. Ask Black deans and Black principals and vice principals. Ask Black students. Ask. Let me share a story. I read an article in the New York Times, June 2021. And it talks of Akintunde Ahmad. Who in 2014 appeared on the Ellen DeGeneres show after graduating from Oakland Technical High School. Listen carefully. In the US with a 5.0 GPA, headed straight for Yale. All over the news. The Ellen show. The author of the article himself was the first Black valedictorian in 2020. So he's writing about what happened in 2014 with Akintunde Ahmad, and now Mr. Muhammad is writing about himself in 2020. And he also graduated from the same Oakland Technical High School, preparing to attend Yale as well. Yes, you can imagine the TV shows, the newspapers, the local news, the articles. Everybody was telling the story on LinkedIn and everywhere, parading them both as the inner city success story. You have heard that same story, the inner city success story. And Mr. Muhammad, in his article, and I'm going to quote him, he said, but the familiar fanfare once again failed to acknowledge the challenges that Black students, including Muhammad and I, continue to face. And then he said, I don't want to see yet another inner city success story emerge from my community. I want these stories to be so common that they are unworthy of such coverage. In his graduation speech, Mr. Muhammad pointedly asked why it took 106 years for Oakland Tech to award this honor to a Black male student. Before I continue, when I was here Monday, your vice president opened up, and you can get the recording. I'm paraphrasing. You can find the recording. I'm sure they're going to share that. And he was talking about something that happened over 90 years ago. And there was some agreement in the area, and three things were highlighted. And when he listed the three things, I sat right in this chair. I wasn't this dressed up, but I was dressed. I sat right in this chair and I listened, and as he listed those three things, I smiled, because we are far away from that, from accomplishing those things. When we look at the Truth and Reconciliation document, we are far away. See, as universities, we have to be careful. We are so used to documentation. We're so used to writing and publishing that we forget we are also missing the acting, the measurable, intentional act. And because of that, I want all our persons listen to me, of power and privilege, and you have a good pen that when you use it, it takes changes. It allows for changes. I want to say to you, we have to be careful. There is a lack of trust in our universities. Well, let me say it another way. Many of our university students and faculty, Black faculty, they don't trust. Oh, let me correct myself. Many of our universities and Black faculty, we don't trust you. Because we have seen the document. We saw it as the person said on Monday, 90-something years ago. We saw the school 106 years building. We have seen Truth and Reconciliation document. And guess what? As you go online, there are more documents. Sometimes people have approached me and said, Dr. Campbell, I would like to hire you to help us write a document. Do you know what I say to them? I'm being very honest. This is for the recording. I said, you don't need me to write a document. You can Google it and copy it online. And I said it without apology. Oh, yeah. I'm a professor. I understand that there are specific data for specific areas, but the findings are the same. The findings are the same. There is nothing special or new about when you ask racialized and Black people what is happening in their community. There's nothing new you're going to hear. Because of the pandemic, there are some more illuminated stuff, but nothing is new. What is lacking, which is also not new, is the lack of action. Let me continue with the story. So in his article, he said, and I'm going to quote again, he said, but for all of those who didn't get to maximize their potential, for all those who had the ability but lacked the opportunity, I owe it to them to appreciate this history made by the people who put me in this position. So yes, we respect, we honor the Black excellence we see. Absolutely. Don't walk away thinking I said do not celebrate. Because if you get to know me, I like a celebration. He said, I owe it to them to appreciate this history made by the people who put me in this position. We owe it to them to make sure, while I may be the first Black young man to be the school's valedictorian, I won't be the last. We all owe it to those who follow in Mr. Muhammad and Mr. Ahmad's footsteps to focus on removing the obstacles they will confront. And we owe it to them to be more dedicated to dismantling racism than to congratulating them for being among the few to thrive despite it. It would be nice if I tell you how beautiful my home is. This is my home office. So what you're seeing is my home office. Beautiful little space. And as an immigrant, I was able to work hard and purchase a home here in Canada in a space and a time when most people cannot. Yeah, great. But then I would not tell you how I was treated at RBC, located at the intersection of Bathurst and Cedarcroft in North York, by a staff of majority immigrant and racialized folks themselves. Oh, because of their proximity to whiteness, because of their complacency, their complicity, and how they were wired to see a black man, they saw me that morning, February morning, just like this, as a threat, instead of as an overqualified black man coming to negotiate a mortgage. Black excellence is not new. You haven't featured it. Black excellence is not limited. You have not preserved it. It would be nice if I only shared with you that in 1995, I graduated top of my class from Teachers College, setting the record and walking away with 6 teaching awards, being Teacher of the Year in 2001 on my first trip to the Bahamas to teach, and gaining more awards, appearing in the newspaper 7 times as the award-winning dance choreographer that I was. It was good for me to tell you that 2001, I was a champion educator for the UNAPSE, which is the Ontario Association of Black School Educators. Or I am still living in the love and the light and the joy of being the Distinguished African, or one of the Distinguished African Caribbean Award 2020, the gown by the African Alumni Association of the University of Toronto. I could tell you all of that, but refuse to tell you the kind of nasty comments I have had from students right at OISE who are so wrapped up in their white privilege and ignorance that they question the sensibility of the university to hire someone like me. And I quote from my evaluation, how could they allow someone like this to teach in a master's program at University of Toronto? I have never gone into a workshop with the idea, when I do tons of workshops on anti-Black racism, with the idea that the people in front of me, that everybody is on board. They are racist students, white supremacist students walking up and down our campuses, creating hurt and harm to others. They are racist, white supremacist, complacent professors and faculty and staff up and down our campuses, creating hurt and harm. Another set of you may have logged in and excited because you want me to, you hope to hear me pour out praise on the universities and colleges and institutions so they can pat themselves on the back for the drop in the bucket things they have done to dismantle and disrupt anti-Black racism, while Black faculty, staff, and students still struggle for inclusion every day. You would be surprised if I share with you incidents that have come my way, across my decks, across my phone, across my messages in the last 3 weeks about faculty and staff and students who are sitting in classroom and spaces and committees being ignored, being pushed aside, ideas being stolen, ideas being disengaged, marginalized, trying to seek a space of belonging, trying to endure the racism, trying to be resilient, putting on their armor. Every day they have to walk into campus or log on the screen. There's a movie that came out in, I think it's 2015. And the movie is Are We There Yet? And it's a movie where the kids are going on a trip and they keep asking the adult, There are some adults listening to me. They keep asking the adult, the change maker, the leader, the one with the power and the access, the one with the title and the name on the door and the parking spot designated. They keep asking the adult, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? They're looking out through the window. Are we there yet? The answer is no. So instead of trying to say all of that, I want to engage all of us in one of those rare conversations. We call them courageous, about how we can acknowledge, honor, establish, preserve, and protect Black excellence in academia. And I'm going to do that very quickly by asking us a few questions. I did say us. If you look at my page, I highlighted the word us because I like that self-interrogation. I love the self-interrogation that is necessary when we have these kinds of discussions. So my first question, what are you doing as a university to dismantle anti-Black racism here at Western? These are not questions for you to answer. Don't raise your hand. I'm not asking you. I'm giving you questions for reflection. Write them down. Put them somewhere so you can write them on your heart, as a matter of fact. Write them inside of your memory so you understand that there is an urgency. How do you hear, listen to, and include the voices of Black faculty, staff, and students here at Western? What does Black excellence looks like here at Western? How is Black excellence being nurtured and protected at Western in a space that has traditionally, through systematic racism and oppression, excluded and marginalized Black bodies? Number 5, how is Black scholarship being used in the classrooms? How many of your professors are intentional about auditing their reading list to ensure that Black and other voices are being heard by your students? And I didn't mean by your Black students, by all your students who are being exposed to the writing of Black scholars. How are we looking at our pedagogy? In the School of Education, many of us, we are teaching about culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy. What about your pedagogy? Is it culturally relevant and responsive? Is it inclusive? Is it liberationary? Is it transformative? How is your pedagogy? Number 6, how are you working to change the deficit data you have in regards to Black representation at all levels at the university? Or are we happy we have tokenized a few Black folks? We see everywhere universities are looking for a Black person to be the head of equity. Yay, I love it. Don't stop it. I love it. But we can be the head of science and biology and chemistry and neurology and sociology and all the other words. We can be the head of any department and every department. Let me pause for a minute to speak directly to the Black people listening to me, because I know there are Black persons listening to me. You may be hired, or you may be a token hire, but you do not have to be a token. You may be a token hire, but you don't have to be a token. Take no pride in being the only Black person in the group. Take no pride in that. Work at increasing the opportunities for other Black folks around you. Swing the doors open, crack the windows. As we say back home, catch the door. Catch the door, I mean keep it ajar. Catch the door, keep it ajar so others can come in. You may be a token hire, nothing is wrong, but you are not a token. Remember that. Work at changing the dynamics. Number 7, what does allyship, solidarity, advocacy, activism looks like at Western? Who is calling out racist policies, racist professors, and racist students? And I want to underline the word calling out. Who is doing that? And for those who are new to the idea and the terminologies of calling out, there are many ways to call out. Calling out don't mean you have to disturb the meeting, turn the table over, take the mic and say what you need to say. There are many ways to call out someone. Who is examining and addressing the admission barriers to Black and racialized students that have been lamenting for years? Who are the persons here who are addressing that? Who is on the team? Who is on the team at Western who will be addressing the ways and the barriers in place so that many Black and racialized students do not get in, or the few get in, that is token? What are you doing that is intentional, deliberate, bold, and brave to create safer spaces for your Black faculty, staff, students, and community? And my final question, who among you listening to me will champion the cause of racial justice? Who will champion the cause of equity in education? Who will champion the cause of saying to Black faculty, professors, staff, students, community, by your actions, by your deed, I see you? So in wrapping up this conversation, I want to leave with you a few things, how we can support Black excellence 365. How we can support Black excellence so it grows, it is acknowledged, it is established, it is protected and provided for. Number 1, acknowledge the barriers, past and present, that Black youth, Black students, Black faculty we are facing. There's a poem I heard a while back. I think it's by Livingston. I could send you, Leslie, when I find it, if you want me to add it for you to add it to anything. And it says, the poet says, it's wrong for us to continue telling our Black students they are stars without acknowledging the night that surrounds them. Acknowledge the night that surrounds our students. Acknowledge the night that surrounds our racialized faculty. There's an urgent need to acknowledge it. I hear a sound. I can't breathe. There is an urgent need to acknowledge someone is suffocating in academia. Someone is suffocating on campus. Someone is suffocating because of gatekeepers. Someone is suffocating because a white professor is doing harm and hurt to someone, or another professor, not just a white professor. Many of us who are not white are complacent because of our nearness to whiteness, because of our colonized practices. Someone is suffocating. The next thing you want to do is to engage. So we're going to acknowledge, we're going to engage. We're going to engage in courageous conversation, the one that makes us uncomfortable. We're going to engage in it. We're not going to center our discomfort over the lives of our students. I noticed there was a trend going on where people would have these conversations about racism, and they would say to persons in the audience, especially white folks, if you're uncomfortable, you could turn off your camera or you could take a break. Don't take a break. Take a break for what? You are listening and learning and unlearning, and you are experiencing a level of discomfort because you heard the truth. Why do you get to disengage and get up and go when people for years have lived in that discomfort, lived in that trauma, lived in that deficit and pain, and you can't sit in it for 2 hours for a workshop where you are listening while drinking your tea? Give me a sip, everybody. Get me take a sip. and immediately, as workshop facilitators, we are supposed to attend to your discomfort and distract ourselves from the content, not in my workshop. You are going to sit in that discomfort and understand that those things were true. The massacres. This morning, I must say something to you, Leslie. This morning, I was just, putting some final touches on my speech today. And I was just looking on the website about the number of massacres. And I have it right here. I was listing massacres, and they were listing 1980, 84, 85, 89, 1990, 1991, 1992, 1996, talking about Rodney King in 1992, St. Petersburg, Florida in 1996, Cincinnati riot in 2001, Freddie Gray 2015, Ferguson unrest 2015, Keith Lamont in 2016, Charlotte in 2016, assault of DeAndre Harris in 2017, George Floyd 2020, and it went back to 1971, 70, 72, 73, 77, 79. It went back into 67, 68, and literally, Leslie, as I start looking, I literally could not believe the number of massacre taking place. And I literally sit in this chair and I said, how will we really excel as a Black community when every time we seek to pull up our roots, there is a massacre, there is a riot, there is a destruction of a community, there is a tearing down. Tears came to my eye this morning. I sat here and I said to myself, how far would we have become as a nation, as a people, if only people had protected and preserve Black excellence. Acknowledge, engage. The next one is to use your power and your privilege. Whenever I talk about power and privilege, people get very funny. You don't need to be funny. You don't need to be uncomfortable. I tell my students at OISE, I say to them, when I talk about white privilege and power, you don't need to be uncomfortable. Because what I'm talking about is how are you going to use that power and privilege to create access and opportunity for your students? How are you going to not do the white savior mentality, but take it from your heart as a true ally, as a true advocate and activist, as a true conspirator, co-conspirator, and say to your students, I see you. I say to my teacher candidates, ensure that every child, every single one in your class, when they go home, they said, I love my teacher. I love my teacher. Her name is Miss Leslie. I love my teacher. His name is Mr. Campbell. I love my teacher. And as you know, one of my favorite words in elementary school is bestest. It's not the word we know. He's the bestest teacher. All of us can be the bestest teacher if we learn how to treat all children with love. When we see Black children in schools and we see them and we have high expectations for them and we support their high expectations. So we say acknowledge, we say engage, we say use your power and your privilege, we say be an advocate, and I'm going to ask you to lead. We are bold and brave leaders. I want you to lead. I was at a leadership event once in Ontario, maybe about 3 years ago, big event. And someone took the mic to ask a question, very, very honest question. And she said, can you tell us as leaders, principals, what to do, because we have not celebrated Black History Month because I don't want to make a mistake. That's a real question. We don't celebrate Black History Month because we don't want to make a mistake. My first response is, how do we make a mistake in celebration? Our mindset. Because if you are having a celebration at your house, I have a funny feeling it's going to start with good music, good wine, good food. I have a funny feeling that's how we start a celebration in your mind. But for Black people, somehow the celebration must start with a slave ship. Somehow the celebration must start about a story on a plantation. And if you know anything about me, you'll know from my history, I will not let that go. I know that because our young people need to know the full story. But if that's all the story you know, the one deficit single story, then you are creating more damage. So I want you to lead bold and brave. We call for courageous leaders who will stand up and say to others, this is wrong. Some of you have sat on hiring panel for years. You know the truth. You know the politics and the games you have played with people's lives in some of these interviews. You know you had no intention of hiring that Black person, but you want to make sure that Black persons were shortlisted. So you have your data and your statistics. Am I calling you out? Yes, I am. And you're going to have to call me back to speak again. Because we need people who are going to share the truth and speak the truth and call us out as leaders when we are not leading. We need moral and ethical leaders who will say, this is not right. I will not sign this. I will not allow the committee to do this injustice. We want you to acknowledge, engage, use your power and your privilege, be an advocate, lead, disrupt anti-Black racism, use your allyship. I'm going to close and I'm going to tell you a story. Just the other day, I started a new series with a school, big school, 95% white staff, a white principal, and a Black vice principal. Wonderful energy. And we're talking about anti-Black racism. We are doing the work of anti-Black racism. We're learning. We're going from awareness to action. We're going to learn. We're going to unlearn. We're going to put some things in place. We are going to really do some work as a team. And I turned to the staff. Everybody was having a good time. And I turned to the staff and I said to them, I hope you recognize that your vice principal is Black. I brought them their attention. I said, I hope all of you as a staff, 95% white staff, I hope you recognize that your vice principal is a Black man. And I asked them two questions. I said, what are you doing? Don't answer me. I said, don't answer me. I want you to write these down. What are you doing as a staff to ensure that your vice principal wins? What are you doing? I said, what are the ways in which you are supporting your Black vice principal to ensure he's successful? How are you working with him to ensure you protect and preserve the excellence that he is, so he can continue to be that vice principal for you? I'm going to close to remind us all, as we started, Black excellence is not new. You just have not featured it. Black excellence is not scarce. You have not honored it or acknowledged it. Black excellence is not reckless. You have not protected it. Black excellence is not limited. You have not preserved it. So as we go away today, I want us to continue to think about the ways in which we are going to acknowledge, honor, establish, preserve, and protect Black excellence here at Western University. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for listening. I know we are right on our lunch hour. Thank you so much for spending your lunch hour with us here at Western University in the Black Excellence series. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. as usual, I've taken pages and pages of notes. And I want to do justice to the chat comments in the chat and the Q&A, how much your presentation today is resonating with people in our audience, and students, staff, and faculty. So I just want to recognize that everyone has put in there, and also we do have some questions. Thoughts about the Toronto Catholic District School Board declaring February African Heritage Month, wrongfully quoted that it was the Honorable Jean Augustine, one of the first Black women elected to the Canadian government, who made the official motion declaring February as African Heritage Month. So I don't really know that that's.
I have no thoughts on that. I have no thoughts on that. And one thing about me, I don't get into things that I'm not aware of. I have no thoughts on that. That's the first time hearing that. And I'm trust and hope that there are Black people or people in general, not Black people. There are people in general at the Toronto Catholic District School Board who are paid. Their salary scale is big enough for them to disrupt any kind of issues within their school system. That's a problem, Leslie, is that sometimes we feel the need to step out of our schools and our spaces so we can go and find, someone to lead a cause when persons are working great salaries in these spaces to do the job. We need to work, we need to act our title. We need more persons in our school boards and our faculty and our leadership to really act your title. So whatever this going on at Toronto Catholic, I'm not sure about it, but I would just say whoever wrote this, and thank you so much for sharing this. This is something you take up with the board, write to the board, demand to speak to the board, demand to speak to you as one person can demand to have a conversation about all of this. This is what we need more of. We need more of community, individuals saying, what is happening here? Questioning intention, questioning these things, not sitting back and just relaxing. We need you. We need you. We need you. We need you. We need all of us. So I'll just leave it as that.
And we have a question here. How can we teach racial diversity to our youth children to promote meaningful conversation?
Well, that's a wide question there. That's a continuous learning and unlearning, right? And like I say to schools, as I work with teachers, I say, teachers, you need to work with parents, and parents, you need to work with your students, your children as well. And that is why more and more I'm encouraging faculties of education and school boards that when you do workshops in racial justice and equity in general, it should not be just for staff. It must be for staff and for community and parents. Let the entire school understand what we're doing, what we're learning, how we are growing in the process. So it's, some of these questions, they are very good questions, but there's a whole level of learning. It's not a one-stop fix. It's not a one-stop fix. It's a process. It's an intentional process. And I must say this, that takes time and effort. There's a quote on Twitter I use quite a bit from Professor Ann Lopez at University of Toronto. And she talked about the work that is necessary for disrupting and decolonizing. And she talks about the effort and the work that sometimes we forget that is necessary. One talk, one afternoon, one event is not going to do it. That's why I discourage so many people from asking me to do the One Black Talk. I would ask them, Leslie, I said, what work are you doing? And I'm going to share this. I have an organization come to me, and they're very honest. They said, we have never done anything to do with anti-Black racism before. We are a staff of 50 white people. I said, I can't be your first speaker. I said, I can't. I said, this is too strong for you. I said, I can't be your first speaker. I said, you need to take your time to intentionally start some level of awareness. You can't bring me in at the beginning. Or if you can manage it, that's fine. But I said, you have to understand, this is a process of learning and unlearning. And too many of us want to do the One Black Talk and think we have done it. You're not, what, One Black Talk? Everywhere you go, people are doing the one like equity talk, and then people want to walk away, say, wow, I had a great talk. Dr. Campbell was the speaker. Now I feel like I'm anti-racist. You are not. What? No. You have to engage in a level of intentional learning. And that may be the issue with some of these ideas, is that people are not engaged in intentional learning. It's lacking, and we need to make sure we do that.
And I have two questions that are very similar. One about how do we engage folks in the work if they are afraid of making mistakes and missteps? And also constructive suggestions of how insecure teachers can lead in celebrating Black History Month.
The second one I want to take first. Insecure teachers, you have to work on your insecurity. You have to work on the insecurity. If we are going to lead as educators, we have to be well enough to be good enough. We have to be well enough to be good enough. We have to be knowledgeable to execute. When young people come to me and they want to be mentored by me, and they said, I love your speech, Dr. Campbell. I said, well, you're listening to the 8th draft. And they look at me. Because, in a world of social media, if you just click it and upload it, it's a voila. This work is not voila. There's no abracadabra to this work. It's intentional. You hear that word I'm using again, Leslie? You hear that word I'm using again? It's intentional. It's deliberate. It takes work. It's not going to happen. So I want those persons who are scared to work on that level of security. But I want to answer the first question. It's very important I respond to that first question. You are right. You are right. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to, Leslie, I have to share as an example. Let me share something with all of us. I shared the story with my students this morning at 9 o'clock, and I feel it's appropriate to share it right now. We're going to make mistakes. All of us. The issue is not the mistake. The issue is your attitude. I have gone into spaces and someone makes a mistake, whether it's something homophobic, racist, whatever. It's not the problem we have is the work it takes, especially for racialized or marginalized folks, to now have to sit down and to educate this person who has made the mistake. And that person's attitude is filled with arrogance. There's a lack of cultural humility in many of our spaces. So let me share my story with you. And I'm going to have to get my props because I'm good with a prop. So I identify as gay. I'm a part of the LGBTQ community, the 2S LGBTQ community. I was asked to be a judge on the panel of Toronto's biggest drag pageant. I was asked to be a host when they found out that I'm good with a mic. And I was asked to be the host. And remember now, Leslie, if you have never been to a drag pageant, you must attend one the next time. It's just good drama. It's a good time out. The performance, the excitement, the talent, it's just so great. And I am the guest, I am the host, Leslie, and I run out on stage and I held the mic. And I see my prop, I got my prop, I held the mic. And I'm like, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, and ladies and gentlemen. And this evening, late, and I went on and on. It's amazing, beautiful evening. And I went backstage because now it's the first category. And I am flowing, my energies is way more than 10. I think I'm at a 12 by now. And it's amazing. And someone came to the back, Leslie. I want everybody to listen to me. Someone came to the back and she said to me, hey, Andrew, that's me, Andrew. She said, I noticed, you keep saying, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. I said, we're at a drag pageant. There's a lot of non-binary and trans people in the audience. And I went, and she said, no. She gave me a hug and she said, no, thank you. And she said, that's all right, just make sure, and we whispered in the dark in the back and it was over. In 1 minute, as an educator, I was schooled, I got a lesson. In 1 minute, Leslie. So I went out on the stage, got back my props again, I took the mic. And I said to everybody, I said, you know, in the daytime, I am a teacher by profession. And I just wanted to show you the power of education. Just as I was backstage, someone came around the back and with a whole lot of love poured into me a lesson that when I came out here, anyone noticed I kept saying, ladies and gentlemen, well, tonight, that changes. Tonight, I am reminded of my own learning and unlearning. And I want to apologize for all the trans folks and non-binary folks that are in the audience. Please accept my apology. Can you allow me to start over? The crowd went yes, and I started over. And if you look on my Facebook, I always say, hi, peeps. What am I saying, Leslie? We have to be intentional. That's word again. I don't know. Look like that they're going to name that word. That's my word. We have to be intentional about our learning and unlearning. And we have to learn that the cultural humility that is lacking especially in university spaces, because we are professors, we are powerful people. We cannot be corrected. A student sent me a message 4 weeks ago. I was doing a lesson and I just went right into a story. And she said, Dr. Campbell, in a very private message, can you remember next time to give us a trigger warning because I was triggered by your story? I said, I am sorry. Thank you so much for sending me this message. I am sorry. Thank you so much. And I went to the class. She didn't ask me for an apology. She just said, Dr. Wonderful student. But I went to the class and I used it as an example. I said, someone corrected me last week, Tuesday, with such love. And I want us to remember when we are teaching in our schools and we are sharing certain stories, let us be intentional according to who is in front of us. We may or may not know to make sure if we have the opportunity to do, because sometimes we want to give those trigger warnings. I had the opportunity and I forgot. You know what you're going to be done? What's going to happen, Leslie? You're going to be respected more. Somehow in academia, we believe when we are corrected, we have been watered down. We are not watered down. We are authentic. We are human. So I want people to understand they will make mistakes. How you deal with the mistake is the issue. And I can tell you right now, examples of racism issues happening in universities. And the problem has expanded because the person who made the error refused to apologize, refused to acknowledge the hurt. Because what we want to use is free speech argument. And we want to show that we have 2 degrees and 2 PhDs and we have studied one, we have read wide, instead of just using our human touch and say, I'm sorry, Leslie. I didn't even realize you were sitting there. I'm sorry that I keep using a word that should have been out of my vocabulary. I want to own it and unlearn it.
Thank you for that. Great answer. And there's more and more questions, so please, I'll keep asking and you let me know when you have to go.
We'll take 2 more. We'll take 2 more.
Okay,
we'll take 2 more. Just 2 more. Yes.
Next in line is, can you please elaborate on the notion of using our own power and privilege? And I would add to that question, influence, to dismantle colonization and anti-Black racism. It's
simple. What can you do? That is simple. What can you do? Let me give an example. Some of us may be able to sleep in lie in or sit in whatever at the intersection of Dundas and Young, like I have done years ago, or sit at the police head office on college and do a sit-in or a sleep-in. So if you can do that, some of us may be able to chain ourselves to the gate. Some of us can, but there are many of us who your power and your gift is singing. You can use your music. You can use sitting on a board in a committee. You can lend yourself. I remember I told a secretary once for a committee that I was on how powerful her contribution was. Because somehow I picked up that she thought because she wasn't doing all the running up and down, she was just simply taking minutes. And I said, you have taken tons of minutes and work in such a way that we have gone back to those minutes to actually cite and quote. That's powerful. What is it that you have to use to create change? And that's not just about racism. It's about anything where there needs to be change. How are you using your power, your privilege, your access, your influence, your skills, your ability, your gifts, your treasures, your talents? How are you using those to create change. That's simply what it is. There's no magic spell. I keep on telling you that there are people everywhere looking for the abracadabra, Leslie. It's a thing. Everybody looking for some form of formula. The formula is you. See it here. This is a formula. It's in your hands. What can you do?
I loved when you said at the end, what ways, well, the question, what ways are we, and we here at Western, supporting and preserving and uplifting our, Black faculty, Black staff, Black students. And then we have another, what are your thoughts regarding Canada's policies to not acknowledge immigrant work experience or education as it is not, quote, Canadian experience?
That would not take a one answer, of course. That is a long, I came here myself. Maybe it's good for me to share my story. And maybe I hope the person who asked that maybe is a younger person who wants to know. So I came here myself as an immigrant. I came here, I filed for myself as we're called a skilled worker. I came to Canada in 2008 in the time when skilled worker category there were many issues with the category skilled worker because we had to come here with all the qualification and come here with the money. We had to show we had $10,000 and we had degrees and the masters and all of that kind of stuff. And I remembered how many persons were working in shops and in spaces that were not with their skill. And then you keep on hearing the word Canadian experience. And so there were persons who were advocating against the idea. But I also remember how intentional I was when I was speaking one event and I said, we are the HR managers. Here we go again, Leslie, with the power, the privilege, the access, the talent, the gifts, the ability. We are the HR managers who are saying to their institutions, this policy here is wrapped up in racism. This policy is wrapped up in anti-Black racism, in marginalization. This policy is wrapped up in that. Who is going to say that? Who is going to say, why do we need to write 5 years Canadian experience? What about this job needs 5 years Canadian experience? Tell me what in this job where somebody is employed to photocopy paper. Tell me about this photocopy machine that needs 5 years Canadian experience. This is the kind of conversation that we're lacking, because what we like in universities are conversation that we all can perform how intelligent we are. I've seen it. 5 people get around a table and we exercise our PhD and we try to perform who can quote and cite the most, while people are suffering. There need to be someone bold and brave. Let me go personal for you. I applied for a job years ago when I just came to Canada, not too long, maybe for a college, and I was shortlisted as one of 2 candidates, Leslie. And thank you for your question. Powerful question. And at the end of the interview, I realized who the other person was, because I was teaching part-time at the college at that time. And I saw that it was this person. She didn't have half my qualifications. And they chose that person. And that person the next week wrote me and asked me to be a guest speaker for the first event she was hosting. I remember another university, I was shortlisted. As a matter of fact, and I'm going to tell the story. You know what I'm going to tell it? Because it's my story to tell. I was shortlisted. As a matter of fact, I was not shortlisted alone. I was selected. I was the candidate. I was asked to turn up for first I'm sharing the story the right time. I was asked to turn up to a breakfast with the dean at that time, or the whatever her title was. She was the head of the department. I was going to be the next person in line, the associate, whatever. And we had breakfast. And she said to me, everybody in the committee likes you. She said, everybody. You bring this online. That's what that I was. I have 13 years of online teaching. They wanted to have launched an online part. I was the person. I've been teaching online for 13 years. I've written a course for online. I have managed a staff online. I have done this work way before pandemic. This is that's why I'm so comfortable in this rectangle here. Very comfortable. This is my zone as well. And she went on, and then she said, but I'm not going to hire anyone because I don't think I know what I want. This is a university, this is a college that peers with a university. Now I think you know what I'm talking. A college that peers with a university. And then she looked at me and she said, you are tall, you have such presence. She said, I feel like if I even hire you, they will listen to you and not listen to me. And I'm going to confess something, Leslie, right now. So for those who don't understand what racialized folks go through, I feel my emotions coming, but I'm going to control myself. I sat in that chair in front of her having breakfast. And what I did, because I wanted that job so bad, because I was qualified and I was ready. And what I did to make this white woman feel safe, I lowered myself. And I said to her, no. I said to her, it's an interview. I'm putting on my best face, but I'm just a regular, whatever. And whatever, I will never forget. I will never forget the first I'm telling the story. And it's okay, it's on record because it's my story to tell. And I'm releasing it because I had this story held up for a while. I went out of that and I sat in the car and I cried. A year after, somebody was hired with a bachelor's degree to be the person with a bachelor's degree doing their master's to be the person in line. Because she was threatened by Black excellence. I will end the question right there. This is how I'm talking about. And thank you for that question so I could go there. Because she was threatened by Black excellence. And instead of preserving, protecting, honoring, acknowledging what power and that I was going to bring to that program, she erased Black excellence. In a school, in a department, by the way, that has a lot of racialized students. Because early childhood education, and I said it on purpose, are filled with racialized bodies. But instead of saying to a bunch of racialized students, we have a new leader on the team, and he looks just like you. I leave that. I thank you for allowing me space to share that story. Because I need our young people to understand that I want you to work at being strong and being good and being excellent. Excellence is not just something you show everybody. You have to work at it. But I want us all to recognize that even when our students have work at that, there is a fight, a constant fight to be honored, preserved, and protected. Thank you so much. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you for the engaging presentation. I always appreciate the energy and the passion and the wisdom and the humility that you share with us and your stories. And I want to acknowledge as well that there are many comments in the chat and the QA thanking you for sharing your story and sharing your Black excellence.
Thank you, Leslie.
And I imagine, I know there are a lot of attendees today from across Western and everywhere else. So imagine your requests will be blowing up even more than they already do.
They already are, right.
Keep some space for Western so we can take you to Rose's Tree of Life.
Absolutely. And Leslie, thank you for standing with me. This is my third time speaking with audience because I came through you, and it's the third time we have had interaction This is a part of the work that you do as well in creating opportunities, in creating space for not just a Black voice, but other racialized voice, because equity is big, it's wide, it's all our indigenous and all those things that we are lacking to do. And do not get discouraged in the work you're doing. Do not get discouraged. I always like to quote Dr. Clea Rodriguez, a powerful woman that is also a part of the sessional faculty in the MT program at OISE. And she always says, sending you love in hope, in patience. And she always said, crawling in patience and love and hope. Always, as much as she goes with fire, she always ends with that, because we have to have hope. That is why I'm like the person I am. I live and wrap myself in Black joy. So even after I cried this morning, I ordered in some good, because it's cold and I ordered in some good old Jamaican chicken soup, which I'm going to have, and some fried plantain in a minute. So we have to find ways to consistently and constantly make sure we pour in ourselves and in others the oil and the wine to make sure we are healed and we are well enough to be good enough. Thank you.
All right. Well, we will send you off with our love, Andrew. Thank you so much again. And thank you everyone for attending. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.